The girl went to her classmate to get her textbook and disappeared without a trace. The police began a large-scale investigation, which led to a very creepy discovery. In this video, we will tell you what happened to Aliso Tremba. Alice was born in 1996 in the large American city of Fort Worth, Texas. Her father was a military man, which is why the family changed their place of residence quite often. By the age of 15, Alice had lived in 5 different states, as well as Germany and the UK. Despite such a dynamic lifestyle, her parents had 2 more daughters. From an early age, Alice helped her mother take care of her younger sisters. The girl liked to travel and get to know new cities and countries. She also enjoyed drawing, swimming, and loved animals. At the beginning of 2011, her family moved to Las Vegas. Alice, who turned 15 this year, was homeschooled for the entire last school year, but in a new place she entered a local school. Despite the fact that she constantly had to change schools and sometimes switch to home education, Alice was very capable and quickly learned any material. In addition, in the new school she made friends from the first days. Friday, September 2nd, was a holiday and not a school day. In honor of this, her school held a football match, and Alice took part in the marching band before the start. After that, the girl was going to go to her classmate to borrow a geometry textbook, without which she could not do her homework for the coming week. Evening was approaching, and her mother did not want to let her go alone, but ultimately agreed. At 18:38, Alice wrote to her mother that she would be home by 1900 hours, and her phone would soon die. Since then, the girl has not been in contact. Half an hour passed. Her mother was at work at that moment and tried to contact Alice by phone, but there was no answer. Then she called her youngest daughter Megan. The girl said that her sister still hasn't come home. The mother began to worry and decided to call all her friends with whom Alice might spend time. Considering that the family moved to Las Vegas less than a year ago, the list was small. None of them knew where she was. Her mother also called a classmate, to whom Alice went to get her textbook. A guy named Cody said they didn't see each other that evening. He had some work to do, and he wrote to Alice that he would not be able to give her the textbook today. After this, the mother's anxiety only intensified. If Alice never made it to her classmate's house, then where was she all this time? The girl always obeyed her parents and had never gone for a walk before without asking permission. Megan tried to track the location of her sister's phone through a special application, but by that time it was already turned off. As a result, at approximately 10 p.m., the concerned mother decided to contact the police. Officers arrived at their home, interviewed the family, and began searching. Alice's mother and sisters decided not to sit idle and printed flyers about the missing person from the girl's photo. The police reconstructed Alice's approximate correct route and concentrated all their efforts on inspecting this area. Despite searching all night, they were never able to find her. The next day, the police continued to look for Alice. At some point, a friend called her mother and said that the police had found someone's body in an abandoned area not far from their house. It was only 90 meters from Alice's house. The woman immediately went there. However, the area was already fenced off with yellow tape. The police refused to let her near the body and could not confirm that it was Alice. They only asked her to bring the girl's dental record to the station for identification. Soon some details became clear. The body found was badly burned, so it was extremely difficult to identify it. Experts were only able to establish that the deceased was a girl between 13 and 18 years old. Only after Alice's mother brought her dental records did the doctors confirm that this was indeed Alice's body. After examining the body in more detail, experts provided the police with a final report. Here, even seasoned detectives were shocked by what was done to her. Firstly, experts determined that the girl was abused. They managed to extract biological material from the criminal, which was sent to the laboratory to obtain a DNA sample. Secondly, Alice received many blows. The unknown perpetrator also tried to dispose of the body by fire, but this only resulted in her being unable to be identified without a dental record. The area where her body was found is right next to the road. However, it was impossible to see the girl from the street, because the criminal covered her with earth and chose a place in the middle of the ditch. In addition, the girl was missing almost all her clothes, which were never found nearby. Only her green sneaker lay a few meters from her body. Her smartphone was also missing. As soon as the details of this terrible crime became known to the public, panic swept through the once quiet area. People stopped letting their children go outside, realizing that the criminal could be one of the local residents, and he is still at large. Adding to the alarm were statements from the police, which suggested that the offender had a penchant for serial crimes. Given all this, the detectives were under a lot of pressure. Everyone wanted one thing: for the dangerous monster to be behind bars. The first thing the police suspected was Cody, from whom Alice planned to borrow a textbook. The guy was questioned, but he stated that he was unable to meet her that day, and his alibi was confirmed. As a result, they were left with only one clue: a DNA sample of the criminal obtained from the girl's body. As soon as the experts were able to identify a profile, it was immediately uploaded to the FBI database. However, there were no matches. Then the detectives decided to study in more detail the area where Alice could have been killed. The problem was that at that time they could only guess where the maniac attacked her. Therefore, they carefully examined the area along the route from the abandoned site to her house. They were able to find traces of red liquid on a fence nearby. Experts confirmed that it belonged to Alice, but this did not help the police. Meanwhile, they discovered another disturbing fact. 5 months earlier, another 15-year-old girl was attacked in the same area. An unknown criminal attacked her in a tunnel under the roadway and abused her. However, soon the girl's friends appeared in the tunnel and scared off the attacker. Based on their testimony, the police compiled a composite sketch of the criminal. He was described as a Hispanic male, between 17 and 19 years old. Unfortunately, we were never able to catch him. Having reached a dead end, investigators decided to turn to the public for information. They told all the available details about this case and asked to share any information that could help them in the investigation. As is usually the case, the police department received many complaints. People shared their observations, guesses, and other information they found useful. Unfortunately, all these clues led to nowhere. All but one. The 18-year-old girl's story immediately seemed significant to the police. Elizabeth Morales called them and said she knew the name of the perpetrator. On the evening of September 2, Elizabeth went on a date with her boyfriend Danny. However, they never managed to spend time together. All evening her boyfriend was called by his best friend, but he did not answer the phone. When the number of missed calls exceeded 50, he finally answered. After a short conversation, the guy told Elizabeth that he needed to leave and help his friend. Finally, he added something alarming. From the conversation, it seemed to him that his friend had taken someone's life. At that time, Elizabeth considered this phrase some kind of stupid joke. When the next day she saw the news about the crime, everything fell into place. Unfortunately, she did not know her boyfriend's friend and only knew his name, Javier. Of course, the police immediately found Elizabeth's boyfriend and questioned him. At first, Danny denied the version to his girlfriend and stated that there was no such call. However, investigators directly pointed out to him that helping to cover up a crime makes him an accomplice, and in the worst-case scenario, he could face the death penalty for this. Danny was clearly not ready for such responsibility, and he decided to tell the truth. That evening, he actually received a call from his best friend, 19-year-old Javier Regis. He asked to urgently come and help him. When they met, Javier said that he sent the girl to the next world and asked her to take him to a gas station. Dan gave him a ride. Javier filled a whole can of gasoline and asked to be taken to an empty lot, to the very place where Alice's body would later be found. There, Javier asked to help him get rid of the power, but Danny refused to participate in this and left. However, he was not going to go to the police and inform on his best friend. With all this information in hand, on September 6th, the police set up surveillance of Javier's house. They didn't have any physical evidence against the young man, so they wanted to get something more significant. For example, Javier could have gone somewhere to bury the murder weapon or some of Alice's belongings. This never happened. However, the police did receive another lead. Experts found that Alice's phone signal disappeared right near Javier's house, which, by the way, was located less than 2 kilometers from the place where the body was found. After this, it was decided to arrest the young man. His house was surrounded by a special forces squad in case Javier decided to fight back, but to the surprise of the detectives, he calmly went outside and surrendered without showing any emotion. They were even more surprised that the young man admitted to what he had done during the first interrogation. The police understood that without a confession, this case had every chance of falling apart in court because there was no direct evidence against Javier, but he decided to confess to what he had done, telling the detective the details of that ill-fated evening. According to the criminal, he noticed Alice on the street and followed her for some time. When she entered a tunnel under the highway, the guy decided to attack her, but did not have time. He followed her for some more distance, after which he ran up to the girl, took out a knife and forced her to go to that empty area. There he abused her and took her life. The perpetrator also took her phone and almost all her clothes. He went on to tell how he called his friend and asked him to give him a ride to a gas station. Returning to the place, Javier tried to get rid of the body, but he was only partially successful. After covering it with earth, the guy calmly went home. Immediately after this, Javier said that he hid Alice's belongings and the crime weapon in a sports bag under the ceiling in his house. Now the police had indisputable evidence in their hands. He put his clothes into the same bag, which had been stained with the girl's red liquid, but that was not the end of the criminal's revelations. He admitted to attacking 2 other girls in the same tunnel, including 5 months earlier. Finally, Javier admitted that during his trip to Mexico several months ago, he abused his cousin. Thus, the police had enough evidence on their hands to put a dangerous criminal behind bars. In addition to all of the above, they obtained footage from cameras at the gas station where Javier filled up gas, and this footage was also attached to the case. Unfortunately, as often happens, the trial of the maniac was greatly delayed. The remaining hearings in his case began only in March 2017, that is, almost 6 years after his arrest. The usual bureaucracy and attempts by lawyers to slow down the process as much as possible are to blame. Javier's lawyers insisted that he had shown signs of mental illness since childhood, which was caused by uncontrollable outbursts of anger. Based on this, they asked the court to abandon the death penalty in favor of a life sentence. Javier's sisters also spoke at the trial. There they said that they were raised by an oppressive and cruel father, who constantly beat his son and taught him that women should submit to men. They also asked to abandon the death penalty and limit it to life imprisonment. Before the verdict was announced, Javier made a speech. He apologized to Alice's family and said that he regretted what he had done. This repentance did not help him. On March 21, the court delivered its verdict. Javier was sentenced to death. The man, who was 24 years old at the time, became the youngest offender with such a sentence in Nevada.